Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Through the broken hills, a voice of love that never stills. Grace flows down like healing stream, breaking chains and mending dreams. Boundless mercy, endless light, guiding me through the darkest night. Boundless mercy sets me free. Grace unending carries me. A sinner lost, now I am found on holy ground where hope abounds. The shadows fade, the dawn takes hold, a story written, a love retold. How it burns, this sacred flame calling my soul, whispering my name. Boundless mercy, endless light, guiding me through the darkest night. Boundless mercy sets me free. Grace unending carries me. The drums they pound like a heartbeat true. Bagpipes wail, the skies break through. A song of faith, a song of fire, lifting me from the world's mire.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Stone, the Rick Robinson Zone. Rowdy vibes only, I'm setting the tone. From the extras to your ears, I'm bringing the heat. Truth, laughs, and takes, yeah, this is my beat. It's the Rick Robinson Show, let's go, let's ride. You captains here with grit and pride. Calling it straight, no filter, no fear. The Rick Robinson Show, your voice is here.
All right. So we've had a misfire. That was not the new intro that I expected. That's another draft of it, though. But we're here. We're live, and technicals included, which is kind of the usual for us around here. If you've been around for a while, you know that. All right, let me go find out what's going on with my dogs. So, yeah, back to, remember that technical thing we were just talking about? Yeah, hang on. Joys of doing live radio from your home. Hang on.
The wind it cries through the broken hills, a voice of love that never stills. Grace flows down like healing stream, breaking chains and mending dreams. Boundless mercy, endless light, guiding me through the darkest night. Boundless mercy sets me free. Grace unending carries me. A sinner lost, now I am found on holy ground where hope abounds. The shadows fade, the dawn takes hold, a story written, a love retold. whispering my name.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, let's try this again. This is the new intro, and I'm going to run the whole damn thing.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out. Mic in his hand, yeah, he's got the cloud. Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in, speak up, and feel what we feel. He's breaking down the noise, cutting through the lies, shining light where the shadow hides. With guests in the mix and callers on cue, he's a voice for the many, not the few. Well, grab your coffee, raise that flag, stand your ground, never wave that rag. News with a backbone, voice of the free. Rick's got the pulse of liberty. It's the Rick Robinson Show, bold, unafraid. Truth bombs drop in a red state parade. From the plains to the power, he's speaking it loud. With a mic and a mission that makes us proud. Talk for the people, talk that's real. The Rick Robinson Show, where we say what we feel. An electric guitar band or a patriotic drum hit.
All right, so apparently that's not the one that I thought it was. It's close, though. So there were some instructions at the end that got mixed in by the AI, and I thought I cleaned that up, and I didn't. So yeah, anyway. So that is, other than the stuff that was supposed to be telling it what to do with the fade out, that was pretty much the intro. I have a cleaned up version of it hiding here somewhere. I've just been scrambling. I was working until almost 1 o'clock in the morning, getting things ready, getting some new Substack stuff up and running, and also getting things lined out for the Wednesday edition for Kingdom and Country, or at least starting to. So I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes, just because, I'm already discombobulated anyway. So I might as well use this time to get myself back on track so we can get into the real show. We've burned about 5 minutes or so because I was checking on puppy noises, so I will probably make that up at the end anyway. But for those of you who are curious and haven't checked it out yet, I do encourage you to check out our newest offering here on KLRN Radio. Not because it's mine, but just because I enjoy the concept. It's called Kingdom and Country. The person whose birthday it is today actually inspired the concept. And I'll be honest, I was kind of knocking it around and leaning more into my faith even before what happened. And after what happened, I really felt like I didn't have a choice anymore. So Kingdom and Country is kind of my answer to that. You'll notice I'm trying not to be as much of an a-hole. I'm trying not to curse as much. Primarily because, if I'm going to start trying to walk the walk again, I got to start learning to talk the talk again. Otherwise, people are going to, you don't really know. You don't really seem like, I'm not sure about that. So, yeah, I am imperfect. I understand that. You understand that, especially if you've been listening for a while. But that's what Kingdom and Country was founded about, was figuring out a way to blend politics and faith in this country, because our founding fathers did it every day. And then over time, we've been told that we can't do that anymore. So that's why you may notice a lot of the intros are changing. They're a bit more just kind of amped up, and just trying to bring more of who I am to the table everywhere, because there's no reason not to. I've been running from so many things for so long, and it's just time to bring them all together. But that's part of what we're going to be talking about today, because of course it is Charlie Kirk's birthday. Donald Trump has already made it back to Washington D.C. As far as I know, he does plan on posthumously awarding the Congressional Medal of Freedom at some point to Charlie today. If we happen to be live when that happens, we will try to carry it. I have a couple of folks in chat that like to keep me apprised of anything that's breaking, so I'm sure if it starts happening while we're live, I will definitely know. But we got to talk about the usual stuff first here in just a second. But so first we got to start with the shutdown. I find it interesting, I really do, that Donald Trump has had an easier time negotiating peace between Mideastern countries than he has with getting the Democrats to realize it's probably in their best interest to keep the government open, because if not, you're going to keep turning Russ Voigt loose with a red pin, and we're going to be able to do everything we told you we wanted to do anyway. So I really, as this continues to drag on, I have to start asking myself, is Chuck Schumer really Team MAGA and just wants to play, oh, I'm standing up for you, and I'm listening to the other members of my caucus. I don't know really that you are, though. I mean, you're listening to them, but they're insane. Have you seen the members that you're listening to? The occasional Cortex? That's who you're listening to? By the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but we did upgrade the camera, so it's going to be a lot less grainy now. Sadly, this also means that my ugly mug is more clear on your screen, and for that, I do not apologize, because I warned you forever ago that I have a face made for radio, and some of you are like, you still need to be doing video anyway, because that's how all this stuff works anymore. Yeah, now you understand why I said no for as long as I did. We're going to be working on getting that dialed in a little bit more. Right now, we're still in the getting used to how it works phases and making sure that everything's clean on it, etc., and then we'll start figuring out better positioning and different positioning for live shots, etc. But I'm right now we're just kind of figuring that out as we go. But so that's something else that you might notice. Not only are we changing some of the designs for the shows, we're changing intros for some of the shows. We're also slowly but surely continuing to upgrade equipment, because the longer I do this, the more I do this, the more I want to make sure that it's as good for you guys as I can possibly make it. And so that's the plan. So anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying the show so far. I know I've kind of been all over the place today thanks to being discombobulated by delivery, but it is what it is. But again, back to the point I was making a moment ago, I find it interesting that Donald Trump can talk Middle East terrorists down from ledges faster than he can talk Democrats down from ledges. All right, so we got to talk about this. This came out today. Anybody remember Karl Rove, the dude that was like the kingmaker back in the day when I was just starting to really get involved in politics? I don't know what's happened to this guy, but he's lost about 40 or 50 steps. So we got to talk about this for a second. And this is a quote from an article. GOP strategist Karl Rove predicted Saturday that deploying National Guard troops to Democrat-led cities over the objection of their respective states' governors would ultimately be a losing issue for President Trump. In an interview on Fox News' The Journal Editor report, Rove pointed to a recent Reuters Ipsos poll showing 58% of U.S. adults say the president should only deploy troops to areas with external threats, a view held by 72% of Democrats, 51% of Republicans, and 53% who identify as other. The subtext of the article is obvious. The Hill is telling fellow Democrats to be in good cheer because GOP strategist Karl Rove is on their side on this issue, and warning Republicans that they should cave on this issue immediately before it's too late. Problem is, I don't think that's really the case, though. So we're going to go back into the article that I was pulling from our friends at Red State. Now, a lot depends on what you think of Karl Rove, the political strategist behind President George W. Bush's political career. President Trump and many MAGA Republicans don't like him very much and don't think he's very politically astute, especially in today's climate. Meanwhile, the left-wing Democrats who used to hate him as a diabolical political genius have developed a strange new respect for his willingness to challenge Trump, while still sometimes crediting him as a genius when not making fun of him for actions during the Romney campaign. Which is amusing to me because I'm old enough to remember the day when CNN cameras were crowded around the Bush White House to wait for the imminent perp march in handcuffs by the criminal Karl Rove. CNN even had a running time counter. They eventually pulled the feed when nothing happened. I don't remember the specific scandal, but I do remember that some Democrat staffers in the U.S. Senate, where the writer of this article was working at the time, assured the writer that Rove was involved in something that was worse than Watergate. And Rove's imprisonment was absolutely a requirement to save democracy. Does sound familiar? Sound familiar? I, like the author of this piece, have a more nuanced view of Karl Rove. At his peak, he was probably a better than average political strategist, whiteboard included. But he did make mistakes and was never a genius. And today, I believe Rove is no longer at his peak, and his specific argument that President Trump will be harmed politically if he uses the National Guard to crack down on crime is just completely wrong. And I have to agree with him because you're starting to see it in the places where they've gone. The pundits hate it, the politicians hate it, the political insiders hate it, but the people actually like it. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't really know how I feel about this whole thing of militarized folks on our streets. I that's one of the reasons I've had an issue with this all along, which is why I'm trying to be as middle of the road with you as possible. Because I don't know how I feel about the militarization of America's streets, but I also understand why it needs to be happening. Look no further than this. Nude bike riders all over the streets of Oregon in the Portland area on Sunday. Trust me, I'm not trying to get, we have a hard enough time with YouTube, so I'm not running any of the footage, but I just want to remind you that did happen. That was an actual thing. There were nude bike ride protests against ICE. So is this really the people that we want to keep taking the side of, or the ones that are obviously absolutely insane? Not to mention the fact that I'm pretty sure Oregon, especially Portland, probably has a lewd acts ordinance. Pretty sure that's probably the case. So I don't know why this was allowed to happen in the first place. I mean, I could be wrong. Look, I am the first one of the first men in America that say, look, if it's all right for men to walk around topless, it should be okay for women to walk around topless. But there's a reason that I say that. You might not necessarily like me to articulate it, but that is my stance. Unless, of course, you have to roll them back up before you put them away. You know who you are. Just saying. But look, Karl Rove is a mess. He's been all over the map. Lately, he's been wrong more than he's been right. I think this is going to be another issue where we find ourselves realizing that he's more wrong than he is right, even if I don't agree with this, because I'm sorry. I am firmly getting into the camp of these people should be getting what they voted for. I understand that Donald Trump as the president needs to worry about public safety, etc., but these people are voting for this stuff. Let them reap the consequences of it first, and then say next time vote for somebody that isn't retarded. I'm sorry. I get it. I really do. We want to fix the country. We want to show everybody that we're still the good guys, that we're the ones that know what they need better than starting to sound like the other side here, aren't we? We know better what you need than you do. That's what the other side used to tell us all the time. Do we really want to be like them? Or do we want people to realize that they have to find their way out of this mess on their own? This is why I'm on the fence with this. Trust me, as a guy who used to work in the law and order field in multiple aspects of it throughout most of my 20s, 30s, and 40s, I understand how this, I understand. I really do, because I like seeing order. I like seeing chaos off the streets. I like seeing people understand that there are consequences to their actions when they do stupid crap. Kind of like the dude that murdered the chick on the subway not too long ago. There should be consequences for that. But the problem with that is if we actually believe in consequences for actions, then we need to start allowing people to face the consequences of what they voted for. And this is exactly my point, because the Democrats have lived that credo for forever until recently. You know why suddenly they're trying to get all in Trump's way? It's not because they're afraid he's going to destroy the country. It's because he's afraid they're going to fix it. If half of what they were screaming and yelling at you about was actually true with this shutdown, they would have voted, been like, okay, well, this is apparently what you guys have voted for, so we're going to get it past the 60 vote threshold. But remember, when midterms come, we warned you. Because that's what an adult in the room does when you realize that the other side is trying to break something. You don't stop them. You point out that it's going to break. You say, this is apparently what a lot of you voted for, so we're going to let this go ahead and happen. But remember, midterms are coming. So remember that we told you this was a bad idea before we got out of the way and showed you that it was a bad idea. It's exactly what the Republicans tried to do with the ACA. We told you this was a terrible idea. We told you we need to read this before we pass it. You guys voted for people that wanted to pass it before we read it. So guess what? Now you've got the ACA. Guess what? Years later, we're now finding out exactly what Republicans told us all along. The Affordable Care Act is unaffordable and is unsustainable without continued government intervention, which we can't afford to do anymore. This is my point. When things are designed to fail and you know they're designed to fail, then you show people they're designed to fail, because they're never going to believe you until they see it. The problem is within today's climate, we can have two different groups of people looking at the same information and come to completely disparate conclusions because of how deeply we are ingrained with our own personal biases. And like it or not, everybody has personal biases. It's those of us that do this kind of work, we do everything we can to try to keep them out of the work that we do, especially if we're trying to stay middle of the road. But it's impossible not to let some of it in, which is why I'm still sitting here saying, look, I understood why he did what he did in D.C. But instead of fighting folks like Karl Rove and everybody else that says you're trampling on states' rights when you do this, because even my governor is getting in on that action, scratching my head at that one, but I guess he's about to be out of the office, so I guess he's kind of showing more of who he actually probably was the entire time. But I've been saying this for forever. He should be going into red states that the governor wants the help with, going into the blue cities that have problems in those red states, cleaning those up, and leaving the leftist living in the leftist hellholes with their noses pressed up against the glass going, I want some of what's in there. Because then maybe they'll start voting for it instead of fighting it. But again, while Donald Trump is exactly who we need in the office right now and has done some amazing things, I also don't know how much of it he's willing to fix. The problem with government, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Once you have discovered and determined that they are unwilling or unable to fix everything that they've broken, because trust me, they're the ones that have broken this mess. It was them. They've done it. We, by proxy, did it because we keep sending the same people back in again saying, well, my guy's great. He just needs to fight harder. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you really sure? But the problem is, with the best of intentions, politicians march off into D.C. I'm going to be the one to spearhead change. I'm going to make it happen. Realizing that once they get there and they get the trappings from the lobbyists and the offices and the, oh, welcome to Congress, Mr. Representative, Miss Representative, ma'am, sir, or whatever, they realize that if they actually fixed it, all of this would start going away. That's one of the biggest problems that we have today, is they have realized if they actually fix it, all of this is going to go away. Because if government actually did its job, eventually you wouldn't need the government anymore. Because remember, our founding fathers wanted okay, I'm going to put this in a way that everybody can understand it. Our founding fathers wanted our political footprint to be even smaller than Greta Thunberg wants your carbon footprint, which is non-existent. So that should That should put this hopefully in a way that everyone, and I do mean absolutely everyone, can hopefully understand. But we're fixing to take the musical interlude here in a second. Now, this is something that I aired officially last night for the first time. This is actually a composition of mine. With the help of Suno, it has been made a song. So we're going to take the break. When we come back, I haven't even scratched the surface of the notes yet, so we may go a little long today. I don't know. It depends, because I have 4 shows, and I have stuff to get ready for today, too. Depends on how I feel towards the end of hour 2. But without further ado, here is our musical interlude for today's show. And before we do that, because I am off on my timing, I'd like to mention our friends at Freedom Chat. As a conservative, as someone who enjoys freedom, as someone who likes not having the government looking over my shoulder with all the things that I do, I would encourage you to check out Freedom Chat. You can go to freedomchat.com. It will show you how to download their app for whichever brand of phone that you have. Freedom Chat is awesome. You can actually set it up to where your messages only stay in place for so long. You can even have a setting inside any of your conversations where nobody involved in the conversations, even if it's just you and your best buddy, is allowed to take screenshots. And even if they try, all they're going to get back is a blank screen. This is the kind of freedom with chat that America needs. So I do encourage you to check them out today. And again, if they'd had this, Signalgate wouldn't have been a thing. My name's Rick Robinson. Hour 1 is halfway in the books. Here we go with my newest creation, Freedom Isn't Free.
They shut the lights down in the city, say the system's on the ropes, while the same hands that broke it hold your paycheck and your hopes. They'll sell your sweat for silver, call your sacrifice relief, but every drop of truth we bleed writes another line of belief. Freedom isn't free, it's carved in blood and fire and stone. It's the price of stand tall when they tell you to kneel and go home. They can lock up every promise, tax the air we breathe, but they'll never change the hearts of those who still believe. Cause freedom isn't free. They preach peace from marble towers while they fence off your front yard. They wave a flag made out of rules and call obedience smart. They'll brand your voice as danger, they'll mock your faith as greed. But freedom don't need permission, it just needs men who bleed. Freedom isn't free, it's carved in blood and fire and stone. It's the price of standing tall when they tell you kneel and go home. They can lock up every promise, tax the air we breathe, but they'll never change the hearts of those who still believe. Cause freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free, it's written in red on history's page. A warning to the tyrants and the cowards of the age. They can bury us in silence, but the truth still screams. Freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free.
All right, welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. That was Freedom Isn't Free. New single produced by me with the help of artificial intelligence you may know as Suno. It took a while, but I think I'm getting stuff dialed in over there. It was something I wasn't sure I was ever really going to be able to do. But I've figured out I'm actually not terrible at it as long as I take my time. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy that one. That may or may not make it over to Spotify soon. I haven't decided yet. Anyway, all right. So we're back. We're live. Hour 2 is halfway through. BZ, did I accidentally give out my given name, or did I just say it so fast that you couldn't understand me? Because I'm confused by the question. Either way, it's okay, because it's not like I hide my given name much anymore. This is part of the name I use is so much a part of the brand. I've been told I should probably stick to it. I was just curious by the question, or maybe did I say it too many times? Who knows? I don't know how to answer that because I don't know what I did. Anyway, so as we continue to talk about the stuff going on with everything, I want to take a moment to be able to gleefully throw none other than Jessica Tarlov under the bus. Earmuffs for those of you who can't stand her voice, but I promise this one might actually be worth it for you. Here we go.
On the immigration front, there was a tendency amongst Democrats, and especially Democrats who are discussing the issue, so people who do interviews or are part of the media, to minimize it over the first 2.5 years when there were a lot of people coming in here. And I thought that it was a stunt, when they started busing migrants. They go to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
It was the smartest thing they ever did.
Well, it's interesting because I have a friend who lives in Florida, and I said, what did you think of Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott taking some of these immigrants and moving them to northern states? And she said, I thought it was great because nobody really was paying attention before that. And I do think that this untold story was the strain on social services and communities, particularly along the border. This huge influx of immigrants was having. And I think the mainstream media, however you define that these days, kind of ignored that story to its peril.
So there you have, basically, in no uncertain terms, Jessica Tarlov admitting that immigration policy has been a loser for Dems and a win for Republicans. Now, she won't ever say that on the show, but this is one of the reasons why, and I think this to be true of most of, well, I don't really want to say most of them, but I know that when Glenn left CNN, it was because he felt like too many people were play acting. So then he went over to Fox News, where he said after departing that he felt much the same way, that some of these people were playing caricatures for ratings. I'm going to be honest. I may give you a different name, but what you're seeing and hearing from me is exactly what I think and feel 99.9% of the time. Now, I'm a bit more boisterous on mic than I am off, and you can ask people who know me for clarification on that. I will say it's less so than it used to be, which I think may be part of the reason why my ex-wife left me, because I used to be pretty meek and mild when it came to her, and just kind of let her do whatever she wanted for the most part, because I didn't really care. And then the more I got outspoken and did this kind of stuff, the more outspoken I kind of got everywhere, and the less she seemed to like it. But and still, for the most part, I'm a lot more subdued when I'm not on a mic. As a matter of fact, I don't really. I am not a people person. It's not that I don't like people. It's not that I can't, be socially active, etc. I don't like being in spaces that are too people-y. And now that I moved out into the country, it's even worse. If I go into the city, I'm there for maybe 30, 45 minutes before I'm like, okay, we got to go. I just can't do it anymore. So, but again, this goes back to something that I was talking about the other day. Overstimulation causes all kinds of issues. And that's why our kids and grandkids having access to smartphones at such a young age and continuing to be able to use them all the time is leading to so many social anxiety disorders, brain chemistry issues, and everything else, because their sources of input have changed in their formative years. So in case you're wondering what this month's series over at Kingdom and Country is about, there you go. Because we just did the opening on that. We'll have a Wednesday night edition this week because Inquiry is off, and then we'll be back to regular schedule on Sunday again as well. So, I mean, that has tie-in here, though, too, because that's something that I've been preaching about for a long time. Kids below a certain age should not have access to electronics constantly. because it changes how their brains process information. And we're going to be getting into that as the series continues. So, as we get into the stories for segment 2, so you remember that whole mortgage fraud thing that Letitia James is getting in trouble for? Because, yeah. So this is getting worse, not better. This is again from our friends over at Red State. This is by Bonchi. With New York Attorney General Letitia James facing federal mortgage fraud charges, a new revelation has added another layer to the story. As Red State reported previously, James, who bragged about weaponizing the justice system against now President Donald Trump, because remember, she did, her entire campaign slogan was, "I'm gonna get you, sucker." She would go to campaign events. "I look forward to the day that I can clock in as your attorney general, do everything I can to chase down and arrest Donald Trump, and then clock out and go home." Now, I'm paraphrasing a bit for shortness, but that's basically what she said. So again, after bragging about this, she's now accused of lying about a house she bought in Virginia in order to secure a lower interest rate. When she filled out the forms, she attested to it being a second residence, which carries with it owner occupancy requirements and stipulations on how many years must pass before it can be rented. Instead, she immediately rented it out, a move that would have changed the terms of the loan, leading to a higher interest rate had she not allegedly falsified the application. So who exactly is it that's living in this fraudulently obtained home, you might ask? So if you only read the slimes, you'd think it's just a grandniece who needed tranquility. But according to a new report, the grandniece is actually a fugitive from justice, wanted in the state of North Carolina on some rather serious charges. So let me see if I understand this correctly. The top cop in the state of New York is harboring a fugitive. I don't know why this surprises me, but it maybe a little surprises me. So let's go over this again. Is the Attorney General of New York, who is currently facing federal criminal charges, harboring a fugitive in the house she allegedly obtained through fraud? Because it sure seems like that's what's happening here. And the fact that this is a family member and not some random person makes it so much worse. I mean, come on, dude. Yeah. No, well, I don't necessarily want to say below 18 because even my kids started getting cell phones at like 16 when they started, being high schoolers and extra activities and all that stuff. The only rule that was different, and I was argued with about it for a long time, was my youngest. He got one at 14, but that's because he actually started playing football in middle school, and the wife wanted to be able to get a hold of him about practices, etc. So I caved a little bit, and we went 2 years earlier on that one. But in this day and age, I have to agree. I think kind of like everything else, you shouldn't really have one so you can afford to pay for it. Oh, yeah. I mean, look, this is just a nuts story to me. What I find is funny is now you have the left all he's weaponizing the government. You were fine when Biden was doing it. You were fine when even Obama was doing it. Just Cliff Notes versions, real quick. During 2015-2016, Obama let loose the FBI and the CIA to collude to try to catch Trump campaign members in what they call honeypot schemes. Then he basically told the mid-level bureaucrats, the midwits, a lot of which have been cleaned out under Trump, as the transition was happening, to basically do business as usual, to ignore the president, speak more directly to your immediate supervisors, and follow their instructions. Because they knew Trump wasn't really planning on cleaning house for his term. He didn't know what he was doing. So he was relying on people that were already there and thinking that now that he was the boss, they would listen, not realizing that a lot of these people had been indoctrinated and actually put in these positions on purpose. Then in Trump's second term, we found out about these midwits that are actually ensconced or were ensconced in DC mid-level bureaucratic power seats. And we're doing everything they can or could during Trump's first term to undermine him at every single term, which is why I laugh at all these people when Trump calls it Biden's FBI. when he was on the way out the door, he's not wrong. They were still loyal to Biden and Obama. Trump didn't figure that out until it was too late, which is why he's done a much different tack this time as far as handling his business. And he has gone through and started cleaning out the people that were entrenched in positions of power that were that were in fact the deep state. They were mid-level enough that they had secured power for the people below them, but they were mid-level enough that they never really got noticed, which is the very definition of the deep state. So, sorry, just going to say this again, and I know we have some Gavin Newsom folks that like to tune in from time to time because for some reason I get crazy numbers in California. Trump was right about everything. I mean, not literally everything, but pretty damn close, it seems, which is kind of scary. What do you think about it? Or it should be, anyway. All right, so we got to talk about this real quick as we are already halfway through the final segment of hour one. KLR Radio players. We are doing The Day the Earth Stood Still. Sorry, I had to rewind the mental tape there. It is October 24th, 2025, 8:30 p.m., so a week from Friday. Be there or be square. So if you haven't checked out KLR Radio Players works yet, we typically do a fall play and a Christmas play. Well, actually, we're trying to get back up to at least 3. We used to do a fall play, a Christmas production, and then we were trying to do a fall play, a Christmas production, then a spring production. Last year, we managed to do, I think it was Christmas and spring. So this year, we're kicking it off with the fall one, which is usually Halloween related because it's spooky season here on KLR Radio, which is a perfect time to plug Juxtaposition as well. Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, we're going to continue our foray into everything cryptids for spooky season or for Juxtaposition, what we call Juxtober. So those two things should pair very nicely. So next weekend, Friday night, you get The Day the Earth Stood Still. Saturday night, you get Juxtaposition Cryptids, along with Front Porch Forensics, which is always kind of a spooky show because it's about, murderers and serial murderers and all that cool stuff. So what am I trying to say? Keep it locked, klrnradio.com, because we've got the stuff that you want to listen to. All right, so got to talk about this a little bit. Charlie Kirk was born this day in 1993. This is kind of what set me over the edge, because for the first week or so, I didn't even let myself connect these dots. This kid was born 5 months after my oldest son. When I connected the dots that this could have been my oldest son, that's when all of this became really, really personal for me. Because, ladies and gentlemen, one of the hardest things that I've had to come to terms with is realizing that one of my precepts, one of my grounding principles has been wrong this entire time. I have always held to the standard of if we can just sit down and talk, we can find common ground. And also in akin to that and going along with that is this one. The left aren't bad people. They're just people with terrible ideas. I don't know how much of that can be considered the truth anymore. Point 1, the Mangione case. Point 2, the Charlie Kirk assassination. Point 3, the 2 attempts to take out Donald Trump that have failed. There's actually even a third one wrestling around in there somewhere, if memory serves, but it never really came to fruition, so it wasn't found out about until well after the fact. Then you've got the fact that people were celebrating the death of an insurance CEO as if he was some sort of war criminal. Charlie Kirk, the same. So as much as I have tried, and please understand when I talk about the left, I'm not talking about the few centrists that are left within that party. I'm talking about the rank and file, rabid, major socialist leftists, because that's pretty much all that's left other than the old people. There are a few people that are still clinging to the idea that the Democratic Party is what it once was. Foreign policy-wise, Bill Clinton would have been a Republican today. Hell, Bill Clinton in the 1990s was articulating MAGA's border policies then. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how far left does our party actually come when now that's the right? But that's not really true either, because remember, that's one of the things we used to be able to agree on. Immigration is a good thing. Illegal immigration is not. But remember, they were also only giving face to that idea. Now they've turned heel to it. So they've embraced everything. Because on one level, they were telling you publicly that this was a terrible idea, and behind closed doors, they were doing everything they could to implement it anyway. So yes, on camera, they were being what is in the industry called a face, someone that you can see, that you can relate to, that you identify with. And then there's the flip side of that coin called a heel, and it's basically when they turn away from that persona and embrace who they actually were the entire time, which in wrestling terms is usually a bad guy. But the left has gone heel when it comes to immigration, because they've never really believed even the stuff that Clinton was spouting. They just knew that's what they had to say to get elected. And the scariest thing about that is, up until recently, they hadn't even been having to do that anymore. But what Charlie Kirk reminded me of is we are in an age now where conversation is coming to an end, and that should terrify every single one of us. One of the things that I'm working on, and I probably won't have it ready until next week, is a new song. I don't even have a working title for it yet, but it's kind of the landscape of where we're going to land if the switch gets flipped on the right when it comes to violence. So that one will probably be ready in the next week or so. I have a lot of other work I have to catch up on this week. Now that I've gotten the frameworks done for the week, I got to catch up on everything else. So, but look, say whatever you want about Charlie Kirk. If you still think he was a terrible person, you've probably never watched any of his complete talks in earnest, and you probably should. The problem with that is, you can argue politics all day long, but you can't argue his impact. He built something that outlived him. And that's what the ability to live free and chase your dreams actually means. You have the chance to build a legacy if you choose to do so. This is what the government is trying to take away from you. This is what the government is actively trying to take away from you. And it's not even that they're doing it in ways that are sneaky. They're just making you feel like you don't need to worry about those things anymore. Because the government's going to take care of you. Trust me, this has been an experiment they've been trying to run since the 60s. It's time to pull the plug on that one, in my opinion, but what do I know? So, looking to see if we have any updates on the shutdown. I don't know if there's been any failed vote attempts today or anything else. I'm just looking around the headlines just to see if there's been any upticks or updates. I'm not really seeing anything, but I figured I'd take a look real quick. Wait, so Donald Trump finally did make the cover of Time, but apparently they used a really terrible picture. So why am I not surprised? Well, I mean, at least he can finally say he made Time. But dude, okay, so I got to put this on the screen. What the hell? Hang on. I mean, seriously, that is just probably the weirdest angle of anything that I have ever seen. Why? I mean, look, I get it. You don't like the dude, but now you've made yourself look retarded because you have an up and nose shot of the president. But yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, at least he finally legitimately made the cover of Time, and they had to be nice as far as the blurb goes, I guess. But that really is probably one of the worst pictures of him that I've ever seen, which wasn't on accident, by the way. In case you didn't, you probably should. So I mean, look, it's your magazine. You want to run it into the ground. That's your choice. I don't really care. But yeah, pretty much any other image of him would have worked much better than that one. But that says more about time than it does anything else. So I'm just, like I said, the fact that they've had to point out that he did something that almost nobody else probably could have ever done is, yeah, been kind of delicious to watch. Just saying. All right. So since we are back around to the ceasefire topic as we start wrapping things up, would like to talk about this for a second. There was an NBC reporter who said something interesting. I'm working on getting that clip queued up for you now. Give me just a second.
October 31st, 2023, I remember distinctly a UN official already describing Gaza as a graveyard for Palestinian children. And here we are 2 years later, nearly 20,000 children dead. And much needed aid. They have nothing to go back to, but they have their land. And for Palestinians, that is what they have fought for decades. I myself right now am outside Offer Prison. This is the largest prison in the West Bank. As part of this hostages for prisoners exchange, we will see 2,000 Palestinians released from prison. Who are they? Let's start with right here. 250 security prisoners, convicted murderers serving multiple life sentences. Some of them will be sent to Gaza. Some of them will be deported to third countries. Some of them will go to East Jerusalem, but about 100 or so will be boarding buses shortly and will be sent into the West Bank, and you'll be able to see them right behind me. Okay. Now, we've seen family members of those hostages trickle into the city of Bitunia, which is where I am, and they don't know how long it's going to take. In the past, it's taken, in some cases, hours, and they were released in the middle of the night. In some cases, it's happened quite quickly, so it might be a very long day here. But over to Gaza, 1,700 Palestinians detained in Gaza will be released. They are, in some cases, minors, doctors, nurses, journalists who have never been charged. It's really important for people to remember that. They've been held under what's called administrative detention. It's a controversial practice that allows Israel to detain people for an indefinite period of time without charging them. These people do not know why they have been detained. And so in the eyes of many Palestinians, you ask them, they consider those people held without charge also as hostages. And Palestinian officials will tell you that they believe Israel has been arresting them, arresting as many as they can to gather, to amass as many bargaining chips as possible for these negotiations.
Okay, so that was probably one of the worst hot mess takes I've ever seen regarding the situation, especially since all of the surviving hostage members are already home. And again, I have to asked the same question the author of the piece that I pulled the clip from asked, where exactly does NBC find these people? All right, so we've got lots more to get to when we come back. My name is Rick Robinson. Hour 1 is officially in the books. Hour 2 is still to come, and we'll see you guys on the other side of the break. So hang out for a little bit. We're going to play a mix of some ads, some music, and we'll be back as soon as all of that finishes. So stay with us, folks. Be right back.
They shut the lights down in the city, say the system's on the ropes, while the same hands that broke it hold your paycheck and your hopes. They'll sell your sweat for silver, call your sacrifice relief, but every drop of truth we bleed writes another line of belief. Freedom isn't free, it's carved in blood and fire and stone. That's the price of stand tall when they take a kneel and go home. They can lock up every promise, tax the air we breathe, but they'll never chain the hearts of those who still believe. Cause freedom isn't free. It's causing blood and fire and stone. It's the price of standing tall when they tell you kneel and go home. They can lock up every promise, tax the air we breathe. They'll never change the hearts of those who still believe. Cause freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free. It's written in red on history's page. A warning to the tyrants and the cowards of the age. They can bury us in silence, but the truth still screams. Freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign. KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Not to be a backseat driver, but can you say for sure you got the best monthly payment possible on your auto loan? Could it be that you might have gotten a better deal by shopping the loan at a few places and have a lower car payment? Next time, before you go car shopping, visit Communication Federal Credit Union first. Our auto loan experts will find you a perfect loan and get you the lowest monthly payment we can. Communication Federal, your auto loan experts. Restrictions apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
The wind it cries through the broken hills, a voice of love that never stills. Grace flows down like healing stream, breaking chains and mending dreams. Boundless mercy, endless light, guiding me through the darkest night. Boundless mercy sets me free. Grace unending carries me. A sinner lost, now I am found on holy ground where hope abounds. The shadows fade, the dawn takes hold, a story written, a love retold. How it burns, this sacred flame, calling my soul, whispering my name. Boundless mercy, endless light, guiding me through the darkest night. Boundless mercy sets me free. Grace unending carries me. the skies break through. A song of faith, a song of fire, lifting me from the world's mire.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out. Mic in his hand, yeah, he's got the clout. Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in, speak up, and feel what we feel.
And welcome into hour one complete, hour two. Good Lord, I don't even. What day is it? What time is it? I don't even know. It's because I've been working nonstop for like 10 days trying to get a million different projects done. But we're here. We're live. It's Tuesday. So for those of you that are working for the weekend, you survived Monday, which is the worst day of the week in my opinion. BZ, I think it has something to do with noise gate settings. I'm still trying to figure that out. Most of the time I try to play them from inside Restream, but I've been in a hurry this morning. So anyway, so we're back. We're live. It's Tuesday. Hour one is in the books. Hour two is underway now, and there's still no shortage of things to talk about. So breaking news, Donald Trump has just announced phase one of his 20-step plan is complete. They're now entering phase two. What that means exactly, we're still trying to determine here. However, according to Donald Trump, he's going to be using this as a springboard to try to bring peace, more peace to the world. Although other than taking care of the Russia-Ukraine thing, I don't really know if there's anything else on his plate, at least for now, but who knows? Yeah. So yeah, in case you missed it, before we went to break, I played a clip of an NBC News reporter. In case you weren't exactly sure what she was insinuating, we're going to go over that now. She was basically insinuating that Israel was kidnapping Palestinians to use them as negotiation pawns. Again, I asked the question I asked before we went out to break: where exactly do they find these people? Because I just don't get it. Oh, so I didn't know about this. So this is from Matt Vespa. It looks like it came out early this morning, and somehow I missed it when I was going through my town hall news briefs and stuff. So there's been a development, and it's been a very busy 36 hours for President Donald Trump. Remember, he's back at the White House getting ready to hand out the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously at some point today, as far as I know. So after bringing peace to the Middle East, once again, he trounced his doubters because, they said this was something that would never happen. Ended the war in Gaza and got Hamas to release the rest of the Israeli hostages taken during the October 7th attack because he was like, no more trickle-down releases, all or nothing. So remember, this has been going on for 2 years. The remains of captives murdered by Hamas will also be returned. They've already started that process, although there's last I heard there were only like 5 to 7 of those that have been sent back. So I guess they're still working on that. The president addressed the Knesset yesterday, and we talked about that last night, and we may, if we have time, play some of those clips again today just because they were glorious, watching a bunch of Israelis give our president a standing ovation when half our country can't stand him because he's orange. It has a cat on his head or something. He then flew to Egypt to make this ceasefire agreement, which Trump pitched at the end of September, and he made it official at that time. As with anything relating to the president of the United States, he wasn't on schedule, though this was intentional. Trump stuck around a little longer to meet with the families of the hostages because, he's just an a-hole like that. He doesn't care about meeting with anybody or talking about how they feel or anything. He's just in it for himself, and he's going to get what he needs to get in and get out. Oh, wait, but that isn't what happened, is it? Funny that.
Today, and what stood out to me is how much he actually cares about the region and the people here. This is the most powerful man in the world, and yet he purposefully delayed his schedule so he could spend more time with the families of hostages and hostages who had been freed in previous deals that he supported. And when you think about what this means, it means that you have a leader who is looking toward the future with an understanding of the realities on the ground. And those realities are that Israel is a population of nearly 10 million people. The Gaza Strip is a population of more than 2 million people. And the president has a vision for a future of the Middle East that would not have all of the violence and war that has ravished the Middle East for the past 2 years, as we've seen inside the Gaza Strip with the death and destruction following a horrific massacre on October 7th. And so this really does feel like a moment of change for the Middle East, an opportunity for countries around the world to come together. And the president, in his remarks at the Israeli Knesset, made that very point. He said from cities and states around the world that people should come together. And he almost alluded at the fact that there are going to be more normalization deals brokered by the Trump administration with countries like Indonesia.
So yeah, again. So in case you're wondering why I played that clip, it's because Donald Trump was actually honored by some folks. Sorry, my computer and I are having an argument. There we go. All right. So this is kind of, it's kind of a big deal. Hang on. I lost where I was, I think. Nope. Okay, I did not. Never mind. It looked weird for a second. So want to put this up on the screen because even though it's a terrible shot of him, we're going to go through some things here. So yeah, hang on. So I guess he has actually made Time Magazine before. I guess I wasn't really paying that much attention. But hang on. I got to find the right thing because that wasn't what I wanted. All right, there we go. All right, so there he is, I guess, after winning the election, President-elect Donald Trump on the cover of Time Magazine. Then we go to this one. Then there's this one. Then there's this one. I just can't with these people anymore. But I guess in their defense, I guess they're not ashamed of running Trump pieces anymore. They do everything they can to try to color them, though. So I find that interesting. So Katie Pavlich actually traveled with the president for this trip. I'm sorry, Katie. You probably never slept the entire time. I'm sorry. Standing among world leaders, Trump delivered remarks about the new ceasefire and was awarded the Order of the Nile by Egypt, which is why I wanted to talk about what we're talking about right now. So this is from Katie Pavlich herself. After receiving high honors from Israel and Egypt, President Trump is on his way back to the White House. He leaves the Middle East as living hostages' families go to sleep with their loved ones at home. Trump on the rebuild of Gaza: we will not fund terrorism, hatred, or bloodshed like in the past. This is from Pete Hegseth. Thanks to Katie for your great coverage of this historic trip. POTUS equals peace. So I think this is another worthy clip to play, so hang on.
So we're going to go and I'm going to say a few words. We'll give you a little speech, and then we're going to meet with the leaders after that and spend a little time together without the media. The media is invited to the speech. I just want to tell you the people behind me and some of the people in the room that are so helpful, but the people behind me are the greatest leaders, most powerful leaders, the richest leaders, frankly. Sometimes it's not politically correct to say that, but I'll say it, the richest in the world that the world has ever seen. And yet when you get to know them, I know every one of them in their own way, and I can say in particular some, because that's the way life works, but some of the greatest people you'll ever meet, and people that really care for their countries. And why this happened is they all came together and they wanted to get Gaza straightened out. They wanted to get the whole thing straightened out. It got to a point where it was just crazy. And once they got together and once we started talking, it went really, to me, it went smoothly. It went so smoothly. You were such a big help, but it went so smoothly that nobody can even believe it, that we're sitting here and getting this all certified out and all done. And everybody's happy about it. Everybody's happy about it, like I've never seen before, actually. I've done other deals and people don't care as much. Big deals, I think they're big deals, but this is something that's taken off like a rocket ship. And it did from the beginning, and I've heard for years, this is the biggest deal, it'll never happen. For years, long before I ran for office, that this is...
All right, so there you have it. There's a bit of the press coverage from the signing, which took place, I guess it was yesterday. But was it yesterday or was it Sunday? Hell, I don't even know. It's all blurring together at this point. It doesn't really matter to the point of the story. The point of the story is Donald Trump continues to deliver things that everyone once told us were impossible. You know who's being hardest hit by all of this? The Democrats. Because you know what the American people are starting to understand? It's easier for Donald Trump to negotiate with terrorists than it is for him to get the Democrats to open the government. Because they want to hold you hostage for $1.4 trillion. Now, if you're listening to ABC and NBC, I'm not even necessarily going to say CBS much anymore because I've noticed their coverage tends to be trending back to the center. How long it will last, I don't really know. But if you're listening to folks like ABC, NBC, PMS Now, and CNN, then you are being told everything that is wrong with what Trump is trying to do and not being shown any of the positive results. So, of course, you have your own biases that are now being baked in based on the information that you're receiving. This is why I tell you, don't just get your news from one place. Even if you listen to shows like this one, read some right-leaning outlets, read some left-leaning outlets, watch shows like this, start learning to do your own research and forming your own opinions, because honestly, folks, again, no matter how hard we try, our bias is going to seep in, and usually the absolute truth is somewhere in the middle, which is why I try to live there as much as possible. The problem that I'm having is I'm discovering that to everybody else, my middle is, as far as in this business, my middle is far right of a lot of folks. But to me, it's still the middle. But to them, when they look, no, you're a right-wing extremist. I am? Really? Because I don't think I am. I don't feel like a right-wing extremist. But again, is there really such thing as a right-wing or a left-wing extremist? We need to just start identifying these people as extremists, because when you go too far one direction or the other, you wind up in the same place on the other side of the world. That's how it works. Political spectrum is the same way. You go too far one way or the other, you meet up on the other side, and you're right there, but you're on the other side of the globe. So extremism, when you go too far one way or the other, winds up in exactly the same place. So it isn't about right-leaning extremism. It isn't about left-leaning extremism. It's about extremism, because really, when you think about it, the Hamasniks have a lot more in common with the supposed right-leaning KKK members than they do the rest of society, because they think Jews are terrible. They think a lot of people of color are terrible. They hide it, and they wrap themselves in the DEI and everything else. But if you get them behind closed doors, they say some pretty terrible stuff about people of color. I've seen it happen. I've watched it happen. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about, whether you want to admit it or not. Sorry, still trying to figure out how to get this back in the shot with the new camera angle. There's no point in having this shiny thing on the back of it unless they can see it. All right, so yeah, like I said, we're working on camera angles, and now that we have a better camera, I'm probably going to be able to take the shot out a little bit further. It had to be close in before it got even blurrier than it was, so we're going to be working on that over the next few days. Sorry, talking to myself right now, making mental notes. It's my process. It's my process. Don't judge me. Anyway. All right, so as a test, if you'll give me a second, because I've been getting complaints that some of the music that I have been playing has been fading in and out. So I want to try something real quick. Maybe. Oh, hang on. I know why. I didn't need to tweak this one at all, I don't think. All right, so while we're getting ready for the break, I'm going to load that into the Freedom chat. Well, about to plug them again anyway, which is probably why they were on my head. But yeah, so I'm going to load that into the deck. Since it's my song, I can play it from here without them yelling at me. And see if that helps with the fading in and out. And I need you guys in the chat to tell me when we do roll the song if that actually helps or not, just so I know. But since we have nearly reached the halfway point of the show, I want to take just a moment, since we usually play music in the middle now, to talk about, again, our friends over at Freedom Chat. Yes, I know I talk about them all the time, but one, they're a sponsor, so it's kind of what you got to do in this kind of stuff. But also it's because I like the product. I believe in the product. I use the product. You can find a group for the Rick Robinson Show as well as KLRM Radio on there. We're working on adding other show-specific groups as we go. But I like the product. I use the product. It is awesome. You don't have to worry about somebody, that may or may not accidentally get invited, which is a lot harder on Freedom Chat, by the way. It's impossible for anybody other than the ones that have created the conversation to bring other people in as far as the conversations go. Now, groups is different. Groups, you can join those. But as far as conversations that are just kind of just one-on-one or turns into a group conversation, only the person who initiates the conversation can invite people to it. And again, if they can't screen capture it, it really doesn't matter what you say when you're in there. They can't run to the reporters and go, look what I found when I accidentally got invited to this briefing regarding drone strikes and flyovers and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that doesn't work with Freedom Chat. So again, check them out. freedomchat.com will take you everywhere you need to go if you have access to a web browser to find out which version works best for you. That's going to depend on your brand of phone, and it will take you to the links to be able to download those things and show you how to get it all set up. So I do encourage you to check it out. It's up to you. Again, I'm not your boss. I can't really tell you what to do. I can just get you pointed in what I consider the correct direction. But what you do with that information, as always, is going to be up to you. All right. So we got to talk about this on the way out the door. You guys may know we've covered it before. There's been a bit of a dust up at the Pentagon regarding their new press policy. And they are not happy. So Secretary of War Pete Hegseth responded to multiple media outlets who announced they will not sign the Pentagon's revised press rules with a hand wave emoji. In other words, bye, Felicia. The Associated Press, Reuters, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, CNN, and NPR have already said they will not sign off on the new policy, which, in a nutshell, is asking journalists to wear a media credential, say it ain't so, and have an escort for sensitive areas. Never mind. If they were politicians, they would have just misunderstood what he meant by escort and been like, cool, let's go. Oh, wait, sorry. I guess that joke did escape my brain after all. Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Purnell previously explained Hegseth posted a summary of the rules on X, noting that the Pentagon now has same rules as every other U.S. military institution. Pentagon access is a privilege, not a right. So here are the Department of War press credentials for dummies criteria. Press no longer roams free. You are not free-range press animals. Press must wear a visible badge. Credentialed press no longer permitted to solicit criminal acts. Why won't they sign off on that? I'm confused. That doesn't seem like much of an ask to me. But apparently, so he went through and started waving bye to each and every one of them, starting with, looks like, New York Times Communications when they said they wouldn't sign it, and then went from there. So this is a quote. Journalists have until Tuesday at 5 p.m. to decide whether or not to sign the form. Those who do not must turn in their credentials a day later. Other news outlets, including The Guardian and CNN, have also said they reject the policy. Hello, I'll sign the policy. Can we get somebody from Digital Beacon and KLRN in that area? I know some folks that live in D.C. I can put them on freelance work. I would love to have access to that kind of coverage. Just throwing that out there. CNN's mission is to report fairly and fully on the Department of War. The U.S. military and the Trump administration will continue, regardless of physical access to the Pentagon. We will not be deflected from our duty to hold all three fairly and fully to account, and we will continue to report on the actions and decisions-making processes of the U.S. government without fear or favor. Why is that the new buzzword phrase? And I say this because I've been hearing it from pastors lately a lot too. This whole fear or favor thing. I don't get it. I don't know why that's the new buzzword, because I know it's not that we're trying to curry favor with anybody, but we also don't want to look like we're afraid of the administration either. No, just stop it. Look, again, if Donald Trump was the dictator that you claimed him to be, you wouldn't be allowed into the Pentagon at all, credentialed or otherwise. If Donald Trump was the dictator that you continue to claim him to be, then you would not, or he would not, be bowing to the courts every time they say, no, you can't really do that. Okay, I'm going to file an appeal and see what the court above you says. That's not what a dictator does. A dictator says, screw the courts, kind of like when Biden got his student loan forgiveness stuff all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was like, you can't really do that, boss. And he's like, screw you, I'm going to find a way to do it anyway. That's a dictator. To a lot of folks, doddering old fool grandfather looking dictator, but a dictator nonetheless, because that's what they do. They circumvent the courts. They go around the courts. Donald Trump hasn't been going around the courts in any way, shape, or form. He's been working through the courts. He's been filing appeals, but that's not what a dictator does. But then again, I've said this before, if Donald Trump were the dictator that each and every single one of you on the left seem to fear or claim that he is, then you wouldn't be speaking out against him in the first place. Y'all don't have that bone in you. You just don't. The reason you are saying the things that you are saying is because you know you are safe saying them. If he was really a dictator, guess what? It would be us. We would be the ones warning you because we have the sack to do it if the time comes. We did it with Biden. We kept telling you this is a bridge too far. Him calling half the country terrorist while being flanked by Marines and glowing red lights and even giving the fist pumps like Adolf Hitler was a step too far. Him signing hundreds of thousands of pardons on the way out the door, apparently with an auto pin, probably held by one of his staffers, was a bridge too far. But now you want to tell this guy who was working within the bounds of the rule of law, trying to do the things that he told everybody that he was going to do, and actually using the power the Democrats keep giving him over and over and over again, because if you guys want to whine about the people that they fired, remember he wouldn't have had that authority if the CR had been passed, because then appropriations would have been set for the beginnings of the new fiscal year using those previous benchmarks, and he wouldn't have had the authority to go in with a bunch of red pins and get rid of people. So I have to ask you again, is Chuck Schumer secretly MAGA and is trying to play the entire left as fools? Because this is starting not to make any sense. I understood it until he started making cuts. At this point, Schumer should be coming back to the table, because if not, they're not going to have anything left to fight over. So is he done? Does he realize that he's done and he's giving everybody a finger on the way out the door? These are my actual thought processes as we get ready to take the bottom of the hour break. This isn't me trying to spin anything with you. This is me actually thinking things through, because something about what Schumer's doing doesn't make sense right now. It made sense until the Reaper was turned loose. Now it doesn't. Because again, if the left really thought what Donald Trump was doing was that bad, they would be the first ones to let it happen. So maybe that's it. Maybe he's decided, this is what people voted for, so we're going to give him the cuts. But I don't think so. All right. I know it's a refire. You guys have already heard it once, but I'm going to do an audio check with this one anyway. So my name's Rick Robinson. This is my show. We'll be back after this musical interlude. Stay tuned.
The lights down in the city, say the system's on the ropes, while the same hands that broke it hold your paycheck and your hopes. They'll sell your sweat for silver, call your sacrifice relief, but every drop of truth we bleed writes another line of belief. Freedom isn't free, it's carved in blood and fire and stone. It's the price of standing tall when they tell you to kneel and go home. They can lock up every promise, tax the air we breathe, but they'll never change the hearts of those who still believe. 'Cause freedom isn't free. They preach peace from marble towers while they fence off your front yard. They wave a flag made out of rules and call obedience smart. They'll brand your voice as danger, they'll mock your faith as greed. But freedom don't need permission, it just needs men who bleed. Freedom isn't free, it's carved in blood and fire and stone. It's the price of standing tall when they tell you kneel and go home. They can lock up every promise, tax the air we breathe, but they'll never change the hearts of those who still believe. 'Cause freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free. It's written in red on history's page, a warning to the tyrants and the cowards of the age. They can bury us in silence, but the truth still screams. Freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I got my ears a bit out of whack. Let me fix some stuff here. All right, so I think we're good now. Welcome back into the program. We are into the final few minutes of hour 2. We will go probably a little bit over. Maybe I'm trying to track the clock. It's doing weird. Yeah, it's because it was like the show clock's right, but I forgot I had to step away for like 5 minutes to check on the delivery. So I technically do still owe you guys 5 minutes. We'll probably make that up at the end. So this is exactly why the Dems are starting to feel really hardly hit by what's going on with Donald Trump, because to their chagrin, all of his foreign policy is working. There's apparently a foreign policy expert who seems to understand why it's working and why the Democrats are hardest hit. This is from Mike Miller over at Red State. Hitler, Nazi, fascist, tyrant, authoritarian, autocrat, dictator, racist, white supremacist. So it's safe to say you easily recognize the above visceral descriptors as a partial list of names Democrats and other leftists have spewed at or about President Donald Trump in their endless stream of TDS-riddled ad hominem attacks throughout the last now 10 years. Moreover, the Democrat Party has become even more unhinged during the first almost 9 months of Trump's second term, with good cause. Trump is accomplishing the pledges he made to voters during the 2024 presidential election campaign, and untold millions of Americans across the country are seeing the things they voted for come to pass. Now, in the aftermath of the historic ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, many, if not most, Democrat political figures seem to be taking one of two tracks: remain eerily silent, like most of the squad until recently, or absurdly and desperately attempt to credit the miserably failed Biden-Harris administration for creating conditions that allowed the ceasefire to become reality. What color is the sky in your world again? Meanwhile, veteran foreign policy hand Walid Faraz, who advised Trump in his first administration, has a distinctly different take on how Trump managed, and in some cases, all but strong-armed, a remarkable coalition of Middle Eastern and global leaders who helped make the ceasefire possible. And I quote, "The secret of President Trump's success internationally is his ability to, number one, form coalitions," Faraz explained Monday during his appearance on Newsmax's Newsline. So that's bad for the Democrats anyway. And their sock puppets in the left-wing media. It's really terrible. I mean, how can this be? How could Hitler, a fascist, or an autocrat like Trump possibly put together a broad coalition and craft a peace agreement that untold numbers of experts haven't thought was possible for decades? Wonder why that is. So in the United States, when they see their president succeeding in bringing together such a large coalition, they have no choice but to support it. Let's all go back to the first term, when he was able to gather a very large coalition of Arabs and Muslims. He spoke to them, asked them to drive the jihadists out, to isolate the regime in Iran. He, of course, convened the Abraham Accords that were signed in 2020. Those accords normalized relations between Israel and several Arab states, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, representing one of the most consequential diplomatic achievements in decades. And also, if you'll remember correctly, those accords were what started Hamas panicking. And they lashed out. And they said as much. Because, again, this is a quick primer, 2-3 minutes for those of you who don't understand what happened in Gaza. So throughout history, these folks have been led in a handful of times by some of the countries that they've come from until they started their own, the same BS they were trying to pull in Gaza. But one of the reasons why it took so long for these countries to start letting them back in is because they are descendants of the people who promised the rest of the Middle East that they were going to wipe Israel off the map and failed. These are the people that are the descendants of, or possibly even still members of, the original 6-Day War. And they lost. And they have been trying to save face with their home countries ever since, now that they're basically considered outcasts. Because that's how their culture works. It really is. Their home countries really don't want anything to do with them unless they absolutely have to, because of the fact that they consider them failures. For those of you that are sci-fi nerds, I'm going to make this as easy for you as possible. You remember the Star Trek The Next Generation scene where the council turned their back on Worf? That's basically what happened to every single one of these people. Their home cultures no longer recognized them because they had dishonored themselves and their home countries, etc. So, but this is what set Hamas all the Twitter, and they started trying to figure out what they were going to do to stop all this mess, because Lord knows Hamas can't afford there to be peace in the Middle East, or they're going to lose their hold on Gaza, and they knew it. They're losing it anyway because it was a failed gambit, but they had to try. So the funny thing about all that is, and I know I'm kind of all over the place inside this framework, but since it's all been brought up, it still kind of ties together, believe it or not. The funny thing is realizing that, you had some of the Israeli prisoners that have been released, and they were talking about how during the election that they could hear the people that were Hamas going, please let Harris win. Please let Harris win. Please let Harris win. Because they knew the jig was up if she didn't. They knew it. So granted, with all of this, there are a couple of realities that must be acknowledged, with one being that only the first phase, well, I guess now, and that was at the time of the writing, but now we have officially apparently moved into phase 2 of Trump's 20-point peace plan has been agreed to by Hamas. And second, the Palestinian terrorist groups remain steadfast in its insistence that it will not disarm. For the above reason, Affairs has said the ball is now in the radicals' court. And I quote, the choices are now going to be to the radicals. Will Hamas actually accept or admit that it has weapons and surrender them? Will the Islamic regime in Iran choose the Abraham Accords path? President Trump is showing everybody that there is no other alternative than going in that path. So as we did just find out, looks like in the last few minutes, they have announced they've officially moved into phase 2. Look, I don't know how long this is going to hold. I really don't. The Middle East has been a tinderbox for a very long time, but I will say this. Donald Trump has managed to get the prisoners home. Now, apparently some of Israel's far-right contingents aren't happy about some of the concessions that have been made to make that happen. But from the response I saw from Donald Trump in the Knesset yesterday, I don't think they're as angry as some on the left want you to think either. They did release a lot of Palestinian prisoners. Again, not really sure how I feel about that, but here we are anyway. All right, so as we get halfway through again, I want to talk to you guys again about the KLR radio players. I know I'm talking about the same things over and over and over again today, but it's important, man. These things are fun. They're awesome. I have participated in every single one whenever possible, other than the War of Worlds, because at that point I was having a nervous breakdown and didn't even know they were doing one. But from what I heard, that one was great fun. I've gone back, I've listened to it again. We are not professional, polished actors. We are not anybody trying to put on a, worthy of audible audio play. No, we're folks trying to have fun, trying to bring a little bit of fun back into your lives. We're known as the KLR radio players. This spooky season, we're doing The Day the Earth Stood Still. I encourage you to join us. That will be Friday, October 24th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, or as we lovingly call it around here, Aggie time. So it is a week from Friday. Which reminds me, I have a wedding to get ready for in like 3 more days. Fun times. Anyway, I think, wait, was it? No, no, that's right. So I have one on the 16th and one on the 19th. So did I mention I'm an ordained minister too? Which is probably the other reason why I'm trying to work on my language a bit more, because now that I'm actually performing ceremonies and stuff again, I figure I should probably make sure I don't accidentally drop an F-bomb in the middle of a marriage ceremony. That would really be terrible. Oh no, not me, brother. I am performing the ceremony, not an active participant. I have 2 this week. So yeah, I've honestly kind of given up on that stuff, if I'm being honest. I'm going to focus on building my media empire and let everything else sort itself out along the way, or not, because I don't care anymore. I don't have the time or the energy or the inclination to put myself out in today's dating cycle. At some point, I may actually start talking about that, because it has been insane. The world is so weird now. It just is. All right. So CNN stepped on a rake again. And I'm trying to figure out if this is the clip or the retraction. I think this is the retraction. I think. Hang on. All right. So, in case you missed it, apparently somebody from CNN stepped on a rake yesterday, and now they're being forced to apologize. But just for fun, let's play the apology.
Now, earlier live on air, I spoke about what a day of real joy this is for Israeli families whose loved ones are finally being returned from 2 years of horrific Hamas captivity, and for civilians in Gaza who finally had a reprieve from 2 years of brutal and deadly war. I noted that for the hostages who are finally home, it'll take a long time for them to recover mentally and physically. But I regret also saying that they might have been treated better than many Gazans because Hamas used these hostages as pawns and bargaining chips. But that was insensitive and it was wrong. From speaking to many former hostages and their families, like everyone, I've been horrified at what Hamas has subjected them to over 2 long years. They've told me, as you've just heard, their stories of barely being able to breathe in the tunnels, not being allowed to cry, being starved and made to dig their own graves. And of course, today, some of the hostages are coming back in body bags.
So, yeah, that kind of felt like a forced non-apology if I've ever heard one. But again, I don't really care, you know. CNN can be whoever they want to be. CBS can be whoever they want to be. NBC can be whoever they want to be. ABC can be whoever they want to be. Just stop hiding it from people and hiding behind journalistic integrity and middle of the line BS and everything else. All right, so you know what? Since I owe you guys some time, I'm gonna say I have not vetted this at all, but I'm curious because I just found something and it looks like it was put out by a group called Forgotten History, and apparently it debunks the party switch. So again, I have not vetted this, so if it's terrible, we'll cut it off. But since this is one of the biggest arguing points I find myself on social media, if this gives you guys any useful information, I figure it might be worth it. So here we go. We're going to let this run, and then I will come back and wrap up the show in the final 5 that I'm going to give you guys extra time for. So hopefully this works out for everybody, because this has been one of my biggest arguing points with everybody. Is they always say on the left, after the Civil Rights Act, the party switched. That's an absolute lie. Let's see how well this group explains it, though.
This is the story of one of the most controversial theories in American political history, the party switch. One of the great and often repeated myths in American politics is the great switch of the 2 primary political parties. One question often arises: how did the party of Abraham Lincoln become the party of the Southern conservative base? How did Democrats go from the party of segregation and lynching to the party of civil rights? Was there in fact a complete ideological switch? Let's clarify this situation. Was there really a full ideological switch between Democrats and Republicans? Today we're going to break down the facts and the fiction behind this idea. What is the party switch theory? What is the historical reality? When did this supposedly occur? Was it ever true? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. The theory suggests that Democrats and Republicans swapped ideological platforms during the 20th century, especially on issues like civil rights, race, and the role of government. In this version of history, the Republican Party supposedly embraced the policies and voters of the old Southern Democrats, while Democrats claimed to have transformed into champions of civil rights and minority causes. The Democrat Party, as we know it, was shaped by Andrew Jackson, a populist but also a slaveholder. The Republican Party, founded in the 1850s, was the party of Abraham Lincoln and born in opposition to the expansion of slavery, but not the abolishment of slavery. Please see our videos on Jackson and Lincoln. After the Civil War, Republicans pushed Reconstruction policies to protect the rights of freed black people. Meanwhile, Southern Democrats created and enforced Jim Crow laws, maintaining segregation and opposing civil rights for African Americans well into the 20th century. Even Democrat President Woodrow Wilson was a staunch racist who wanted complete government control and created the Internal Revenue Service with the 16th Amendment in 1913 and the Federal Reserve to take more money from Americans. By the 1930s, under Franklin D. Roosevelt, the Democratic Party began courting working-class voters, including northern black communities, with programs like the New Deal. But FDR did little to nothing to improve race relations in the South and refused to support anti-lynching legislation or desegregation of the military. He confiscated gold supplies from Americans, and he had the opportunity to desegregate the military and allow the immigration of Jews under persecution from Germany and Austria, and he refused. See our videos on FDR. The Democrats also supported labor unions, which the Republicans in general saw as a communist attempt to control effective business practices. The Northern Democrats tended to be supportive of civil rights for blacks to gain their support away from the Republican Party, which was business-friendly and pushing for limited government involvement, but this divided the Democrats. Southern Democrats remained fiercely segregationist, while Northern Democrats grew more supportive of civil rights, causing growing tension within the party. The 1950s and 60s pressure mounted. Northern Democrats supported civil rights legislation to secure black votes, while Southern Democrats resisted fiercely, trying to block blacks from voting. Senators like Strom Thurmond and Robert Byrd, the latter a former KKK member, and see our video on him, were both Democrats who led the charge against civil rights from within the Democratic Party. The other major opponent to civil and voting rights for blacks in the South was Texas Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson, the future president, who, along with Democratic Senator Robert C. Byrd of West Virginia, fought tooth and nail to keep blacks from receiving legal recourse under the Constitution. Senator Byrd himself had, in the early 1940s, recruited about 150 of his friends and relatives and other associates to create a new chapter of the Ku Klux Klan in Sophia, West Virginia. He later changed his political position on civil rights as well, but remained a Democrat. Despite his long history of being previously opposed to the various civil rights bills, LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, largely due to political pressure and the rise of figures like Republican Barry Goldwater, who opposed federal overreach and supported racial equality. This alienated many white Southern Democrats, also known as Dixiecrats, who had historically opposed integration and supported segregation. This was when the Republican Party began to appeal to Southern Democrats who wanted limited government in their lives, greater states' rights, and the social conservative platform of Republicans began to appeal to many Southerners who were drifting away from the racial mindset. Goldwater's posture and perceived hardline stance against communism was in alignment with conservatives, but it was also used against him, a position which LBJ initially claimed publicly to be opposed to, despite his later creating the Gulf of Tonkin incident as a ruse to get legislation passed to send American combat troops to South Vietnam. Due to the creation of welfare and other entitlements by the Johnson administration in order to buy the black vote through generational patronage, Democrats had a durable base among minorities, urban voters, and socially liberal intellectuals. Also, Southern Democrats were anti-legal immigration into their states, while the Northern Democrats promoted legal immigration. Also, Southern Protestants were typically more religious and church-going, while the Northern, East, and West Coast Democrats began to walk away from organized religion and adopted pro-Marxist platforms, which were deemed by Southern conservatives as anti-American. This all triggered a backlash, and Johnson famously said, "We have lost the South for a generation, but we have the black vote for the next 200 years. This was the moment when many Southern white voters, alienated by civil rights policies and federal welfare expansion, began to shift toward the Republican Party, not because the GOP embraced racism, but because it promoted limited government, states' rights, and traditional family values. Another factor aiding in the shift was the Vietnam War, which also divided the country along political lines, and LBJ took the greatest criticism from his own party as a result. Democrats were heavily divided on Vietnam as well. The majority of politically liberal Democrats opposed their own Democrat President Johnson regarding U.S. involvement, while more conservative Democrats and Republicans either took a neutral or pro-American involvement in fighting communism. In 1968, Richard M. Nixon ran on the presidential GOP ticket, and he courted disaffected Southern whites using code words like law and order, states' rights, and opposition to forced busing, while still maintaining the GOP support for black rights, which still divided Democrats. This opened the door for Republicans, notably Richard Nixon and later Ronald Reagan, who used what has become known as the Southern strategy to gain support in the South by appealing to concerns about federal overreach against states' rights and cultural change. Richard Nixon's Southern strategy emphasized law and order and opposition to federal busing policies, which was a big deal to Democrats, appeals that resonated with voters frustrated by cultural and political upheaval. Nixon had campaigned on getting out of Vietnam, which satisfied many of both parties' voters and also added Southern whites to Republican rolls. Nixon also ended the Democrat-created Tuskegee syphilis experiment program created by Democrats, among other legislation. And see our video on Nixon. Ronald Reagan later unified these groups into a larger conservative coalition, business leaders, evangelicals, and working-class whites, under the banner of small government and anti-socialist policies. Democrats became the party of urban centers, progressives, minorities, and coastal elites. They eventually abandoned the Ku Klux Klan, which they had created after the Civil War and supported for a century because the hate group had become too toxic. Republicans attracted religious conservatives, rural voters, small business owners, and working-class traditionalists, especially in the South and Midwest, as progressive Democrats, especially in the North, turned away from supporting religion, which conservatives found appalling. Yes, it is true that some Democrat figures switched parties, like Strom Thurmond of South Carolina, but the idea that the GOP adopted the racist legacy of the Democratic South is misleading and patently false. The Ku Klux Klan, for instance, was never embraced by the GOP. In fact, the Reagan administration helped dismantle it legally and financially, effectively destroying it. Over the years, Democrats embraced more progressive positions on gun control, gender identity, immigration, and race. They allied with activist groups like Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and others whose critics argued furthered social and political division and supported wanton violence. Meanwhile, many centrist and conservative Democrats, especially in the South, left the party altogether, becoming Republicans or independents. This wasn't a swap, it was an evolution. In essence, the Democrats who have revised their history to remove the stains of slavery, Jim Crow, and violence against blacks have lost control. Democrats love to identify Republicans as being the party of racist and anti-middle class workers. They claim that Republicans adopted all the evils of the old Democrats while never acknowledging the fact that the Democrats were the progenitors of the evil they now claim to oppose. So let's set the record straight. The Republican Party did not become the party of racism. The Democratic Party didn't suddenly erase its legacy of slavery, segregation, opposition to civil rights, lynching, and violence. The great lie that was created and still pushed by Democrats is that the Great Switch included the Republicans adopting a racist and domestic terror policy and embracing groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, which never happened. In fact, it was under Reagan that the Klan was finally destroyed. However, ultra-right nationalist groups that arose have traditionally been Republican in their voting habits since the late 1970s, while ultra-left domestic terror groups remained entrenched within the Democrat Party, replacing the far-right Democrats created and supported KKK. In fact, the modern Democrats today still support active violence. But did the parties really switch? Well, not exactly. There was no official swap of platforms or party names. Instead, there was a gradual realignment of coalitions. The Republican base grew in the South and included all these previous groups because they were socially conservative working-class Americans, and recently many Democrats who abandoned their party and registered as Republicans or independents actually voted for Donald Trump. The Reagan Revolution in the 1980s brought together business interests and everyone else who felt disenfranchised by Democrat politics, and they united under the GOP brand using an anti-liberal, anti-socialist states' rights message and limited government platform. The shift was a gradual realignment of voters' ideologies and regional priorities, not a clean switch. The Democrat platform wanted to abolish the Second Amendment. That was a large part of the political shift in politics. Over time, Democrats became more aligned with the urban minority and progressive voter in major cities on the East and West Coast and in large northern and even some southern cities, while the Republicans have attracted and contained and retained rural, religious, and conservative voters, particularly in the South and Midwest. More recent Democrat-supported criminal entities such as Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and see our video on BLM, and even their left-wing socialist predecessors like the Weather Underground terrorists, and also see our video on them, remained loyal to and were supported by the Democrats and still are to this day. These actions drove conservative Democrats even further away from the party and further divided Democrats and forced others to change affiliation. The argument had been that the parties literally swapped the names and positions, but the parties evolved gradually and their ideological coalition shifted and Democrat methods remained pretty much the same. Today's political map reflects decades of migration, economic change, and cultural realignment, not a simple party flip. African American voters, who largely supported the GOP after the Civil War, began overwhelmingly voting Democrat after the 1960s due to the laws passed by LBJ and the black support regarding both parties still favor the Democrats, but in far less numbers today. It's not about who changed names. It's about who showed up and what they stood for. People generally vote with their pocketbooks, and Democrat policies have always increased taxes, reduced employment opportunities, increased interest and mortgage rates, increased nonsensical spending at home and abroad, as well as increased the general cost of living. But perhaps the greatest driving force sending former Democrats to the middle or right were the Biden administration's policies on taxpayers funding millions of illegal immigrants, importing and increasing violent crime, and the liberal Democrat supporting and George Soros funded mainstream media being caught in thousands of lies, supporting Democratic criminal activities, and creating conspiracies against conservatives. And see our video on George Soros. So, to set the record straight, the two parties didn't switch names or trade platforms. What changed were their coalitions, the kinds of voters they attracted, and the cultural issues they championed. So yes, there was a switch of sorts, but it was simply a matter of those citizens with a socially and fiscally conservative mindset drifting more to the political right to whom they were aligned, and today's socialist liberal tax and spend collective remaining on the left. It is as simple as that. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.
Helps if I remember how to unmute my microphone. I don't know what was going on there. Hang on. I'm probably coming through garbled for you guys. All right. So it should be sounding better in about 3 seconds. I keep forgetting what happens if I have sounds playing in the background, even though you technically can't hear them. All right. So I'm going to say, again, never watched that before now. That is probably one of the most centrist explanations of it I've ever seen, and actually pretty well factually accurate. So if you like what they did there, that's one of the reasons why I let all the stuff play at the end. Make sure you go find them and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can even drop them a note and say, hey, we heard about you on this show today. You played your clip. I may get yelled at for it, but I at least want them to see that I'm trying to help build their audience by sharing their stuff. Some people like it, some people don't. And I may get asked never to play it again. I don't know, but it might be worth it after all. All right, so we have come to the point in time where we are about to have to say goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. Just want to remind you that, and this is becoming more and more factually accurate. Keep blaming the Democrats for what they deserve blame for. Keep blaming the Republicans for what they deserve blame for. But most of all, do everything you can to make your corner of the world a better place. That's where you need to start. No matter what else, that's where you need to start. Make sure that you and your family are safe and okay first, then work your way out from there. Start making sure that you've got emergency supplies on hand. a generator if you can get one, ammunition, weapons, food stores, all of it. It's better to be prepared and not need it than to not be prepared and wish that you had it. This is the Rick Robinson Show. I am Rick Robinson. I'll be back tonight hanging out with the Manorama panel as we do the annual Halloween special they do over there because it's spooky season. Make sure you guys come back before that, though, and hang out with Aggie and Brad as they do the cocktail lounge. Sorry. But two of Brad's shows sound very similar in name and title, and I start getting them confused for that very reason. All right, folks, that's going to do it. This one is going to be in the books. Want to thank everybody again for taking the time to hang out with us today, and we will see you later tonight for Manorama, for those of you that are so inclined to come hang out with us and partake of the showy goodness. I'll have some other stuff coming out soon. I'm going to work on hopefully getting some publications done today. We do have on Rick's Rants, the latest episode and show notes for America Off the Rails are posted there. The most recent drop for Kingdom and Country is on their Substack page. I've got some other stuff that I have about halfway edited at this point that I hope to have out later today or tonight. But my name is Rick Robinson. This has been my show. We will see you guys when we see you. God bless.